this thing going? This meeting of the Haltom City Council is called to order. The invocation Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Jim Sutton.
All right, let's stand. Join with me. Lord, I thank you. We got our summer. 105 degrees, but yet, Lord, we just thank you for the seasons that come into our lives, the hot, the cold. And we thank you, Father, that there's some comfort in that as the seasons pass by, Lord, we were reminded of your love for us. God, we just thank you for the value that you've endowed in each individual here and in our citizenry and people throughout this country. I thank you for your hand upon our lives. I pray that you would help us on the council tonight to just be an example of that respect and the value that you've endowed in each one of us, Lord. And Father, even as our soldiers are demonstrating that in Iraq and throughout the world right now, and that they're doing the commands that they've been sent out to do, doing the job, I just pray you bless them and watch over them as they endeavor to live under the authority that you've placed them under. Thank you, Father, for this country where we have your blessing, and I pray that it may continue and that we would be very diligent to seek out your blessing. I pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now we have announcement events. Chuck Barnett's going to tell us about those.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council, ladies and gentlemen. As a reminder to our citizens that we are still in mosquito season. A sample mosquito pool was taken from Haltom City, has tested positive for West Nile virus. The pool was collected at Markham Drive and Belknap Street near Little Fossil Creek. City crews began spraying the affected area last week and will continue throughout the city. Tonight, the city should be finishing up our spray program. Should you see a spray truck, please stay away from the vehicle. Do not get behind the vehicle. Do not run toward the vehicle. And also remain indoors and keep your pets indoors for about 30 minutes after the truck has passed. For updates about spraying, you can check our city website, www.haltomcitytx.com. Citizens are also requested to please eliminate mosquito habitat in your yard by getting rid of standing water, mow on a regular basis, and keep pools chlorinated. Protect yourself by staying indoors at dusk or wear clothing that covers your arms and your legs, and use a repellent if you must be outdoors. The city is working with a paper retriever program to collect paper for recycling to benefit the new Haltom City Public Library to purchase furniture for the children's area. Bins for collecting paper are yellow and green and are located at the library, Fire Station number 3, and at the Senior Citizen Center. Acceptable items include newspapers, magazines, shopping catalogs, office and school paper, mail, and phone books. Unacceptable items include tissue, food wraps, or corrugated cardboard. Please make note of the following dates. I know one of these is going to be very exciting for the kids. Monday, August the 27th is BISD's first day of school. Monday, September the 3rd, our city offices will be closed for Labor Day. Thursday, September the 6th, we will have a concert in the park at our Haltom Road Park featuring Canta. And Saturday, September the 15th, to clean up our creeks and our streams, we'll have our Trinity Trash Bash cleanup. And Saturday, September the 15th, we have the Gary Hires Memorial Softball Tournament. The location for that tournament is yet to be announced. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation on the drainage utility. This be Mr. David Fain and our city engineer, Bennett Howell. Mr. Fain?
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, we discussed at the last meeting that the staff would come back and give you a brief overview of the Drainage Utility Fund. With that said, you can see what the definition up there on our PowerPoint tonight establishes. The Drainage Fund is established to track our revenue and expenditures that are related to the watershed and storm drain improvements throughout our community. Here's some of our goals and objectives for our drainage utility department, our drainage maintenance department, however you want to title that. You can see that we do quite a few things, from reshaping and grading a lot of our channels and ditches throughout our community. You know, we are a community of creeks and channels, as you well know. Bennett will touch on that in much greater detail here in just a minute. And we've done quite a bit of that over the last year, our first year and a half, I guess, if you will, in business. To kind of back up, the Drainage Utility Fund was established by our council in October of 2004, and the Drainage Maintenance Department began their work in January of 2005. So we've been in existence about 2.5 years. We also clean debris from our roads and bridge crossings. We do have 11 bridges in this community, and obviously with the recent rains we've had, that's kept our crews quite busy. We clean all of our inlets and catch basins. Weed control is a big thing here. We control our weeds through mowing and herbicide applications. This does help with our mosquito control also. And one of our items that we do perform is larviciding ditches to eliminate some of the mosquitoes in our community. We also respond to all of our customer requests to come out and identify some issues. Even on their property, we obviously do not go on their property unless we are granted an easement, but we do at least consult with our citizens about drainage issues, especially in this last year. We do have a fairly aggressive curb and gutter replacement program, and here again I mentioned the fact that we do maintenance of 11 bridges in our community. And there's just some work we've performed in our community. A lot of our ditches are in the southern part of our community. We've actually reshaped several ditches south of 121, north of 121, Thomas Road, Diamond Oaks area, Waldemar, and Western Center, just to name a few. Here's some work being performed on our bridge where we actually power wash and repaint the bridge railings so those that drive over the bridge can actually see the railing. Of course, we seal and caulk the expansion joints, and we've installed reflective signs at the head walls, and we obviously, like I said earlier, removed debris from all of our bridges. In the last 2.5 years, our department has herbicided and larvicided over 1.1 million square foot of ditches in our community. Here's some pictures of our crews at work. I'd mentioned inlets. We also clean inlets. We have over 2,000 inlets in our community, and so far this year we have cleaned over 250 of those. Riprap. We're actually doing some work now at Buffalo Ridge Park. We're going to purchase quite a bit of riprap to assist in some of the erosion that has been created because of the recent flooding. And this is just a picture there at Spring Lake and Haltom Road where we utilize riprap. And we've done over 221 tons of riprap in drainage areas throughout our community. Curb and gutter. If you lived here any length of time, you know there's a curb and gutter issue, and that creates drainage issues, which create street problems. Water is our biggest enemy in our community as far as destroying our streets. And so with curb and gutter funding available, we do quite a bit. We've actually replaced 17,000 linear feet of curb and gutter in the last 2.5 years. That's about 3.1 miles. With that, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Howe, our city engineer. He's going to make the remaining of the part of the presentation.
Thank you, David. Behind me, you can see a general map of the city. Some of the things to keep in mind.
Excuse me, can we get the lights back on up, please? Thank you. Yeah. All right.
Thanks, Bob.
Appreciate it, Bob.
You can see through, just quickly, our city is divided basically into thirds by Big Fossil Creek, which is in the northern area, Little Fossil Creek on the southern end. The city itself has basically 4 drainage areas. This area in the city basically drains to Trinity River. From here to here goes to Little Fossil, and from here up goes into Big Fossil Creek. One of the things to keep in mind on this map I want to point out to you is the obstructions that are in the creek area. And these obstructions, what I'm talking about, are bridges and street crossings, that kind of thing. And the easiest way to see those is where you see the blue areas get real wide. Like right here is the railroad bridge north of Loop 820 next to Denton Highway. You can see how the water spreads out over here. 820's here. Belknap, 121. Basically, these areas cause bridge dams in our city. And that is one of the biggest problems with drainage in our city as a whole. The next biggest problem is Trinity River. Everything south of 121 is considered the Trinity River floodplain. When the Trinity River backs up, it starts backing everything up. So if the Trinity River itself is in a flood stage, our city will be in a flood stage because there is nowhere for the water to go. Also, this map will show you some of the major issues in our city. You can see large areas are covered with floodplain and flooding issues. Okay, some of our infrastructure issues. You have design standards, and it's always a challenge of what rain event do you use to design the drainage system. Typically, in the last 5 to 10 years, the push has been for municipalities to design to the 100-year flood event. And that's what we currently do. Prior to that, the industry standard was the 25-year or even the 5-year, depending on where you were in the country. These different rain events that you might hear about, read about, is the 5-year, 10-year, 25, 50, 100, and 500. And those are statistical rain events prepared by the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Association. And they have a lot of statisticians that just chart rain events all over the world and create these statistics. For example, the 100-year rain...
Could I interrupt you and ask you, where did they get data for a 500-year flood event? I mean, that's a while back.
It's pure statistics.
Statistics from where?
It's
I had hardly invented writing 500 years ago.
It's a probability is all it is.
Oh, okay. All right.
And
Just curious.
For example, the 100-year rain event, it's a probability that you're going to get that particular rain event 1% chance. So if you're a gambler, you understand what a 1% chance. A 500-year.
Go ahead and let you finish your thought.
No, go ahead.
The 100 years like 11 inches.
In this
an hour.
area, it's 11.9 inches.
An hour.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So people understand statistics. If a 100-year flood event happens today, the same statistics apply tomorrow.
Yes. There is no memory in the statistics.
Correct. Just want to point that out.
Right. Okay. Not only do you have the rainfall amount to deal with in your design equation, you also have what's called time of concentration. Time of concentration is basically how long that particular rain event is going to last. The longer the time of concentration, the more rain. And it's the same type of thing. Typical rain events, the heavy rain events, are 10 to 20 minutes. And so that's typically what we design to. Of course, if you design to more, you get bigger systems. Ultimately, it's a check and balance. The bigger you design something, the more it's going to cost to build it. So you have to throw economics in there to see how you can deal with that. Also, we have to deal with ground saturation. These last rain events that we've had in May and June, all those areas, were not the 100-year rain event. It's just that we had so much rain, the ground acted like a sponge and soaked it all up, and there was nowhere else for the water to go except to run off and flood. So those are some issues we have to deal with. Existing infrastructure is a big problem we have in this town. As you see, basically south of Broadway, we have very little infrastructure. And what infrastructure is there is handle the 2 to 5 year rain event, and that's it. So you can see if you really need to design to the 100-year rain event and your system can only handle 2 to 5, there's going to be some problems. Infrastructure, as you go north, improves quite a bit because the city is newer. Like north of 820, most of that infrastructure that's there can handle the 100-year rain event. So it's just an example. Okay, how do we solve our drainage problems across the city? The first step the city did was study the drainage system. It was part of our master drainage plan. As you can see, the master drainage plan, where you see these gray squares, these are major construction projects along our city. There's other construction projects all through these, but these are the biggest highlight ones, just so you can see that they're spread out all through the town.
Could I ask a question, Bennett, on that previous slide? What part does erosion play into the 100-year flooding issues? Whenever you said the part north of Loop 820 could handle a 100-year flood event, what do you mean handle? Because there's erosion issues up there in Skyline and along the Big Fossil Creek that were significant on private property. So whenever you say handle, they can handle a 100-year event, I'm wondering, the definitions seem to be off kilter there. I'm hearing something that is incongruous to me.
No, well, erosion and flooding are two different things.
That's what I was wondering.
And
By the definitions you're using right now.
right.
Okay.
Erosion, such as at Buffalo Ridge, that erosion happens all the time because you have an exposed face wall.
So whenever you're saying the 100-year flood event is handled, you're assuming that that channel there, that Big Fossil Creek, is going to channel the water, but you're not. But the calculations are not taking into account the private land erosion that occurs whenever it handles that 100-year flood event.
There's no way it can. It's just too complex of a system.
I see. Okay. I just
Too many
wanted to
variables.
kind of get what your definitions were there. All right.
Here's an example of from our master drainage plan, the various sectors. There's nearly 12 miles of channel. There's 57 miles of existing storm drain. The recommendation was to replace 23 miles of the 57 miles of storm drain, which tells you, nearly half of it is undersized. And the new system, they recommended extending the system 22 miles. And a lot of that is through the older parts of the town that do not have any storm drain system. Total cost, $103 million. And these costs do not reflect anything doing with the Little Fossil Creek project or any of the Big Fossil Creek COG projects. This study, the Master Drainage Plan study, did not include those projects because they were being handled by the Corps of Engineers. So as you can see, we have a huge mountain to climb in order to bring the city as a whole up to some kind of relative positive standard in drainage. Okay. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Howell or Mr. Fain on this? Yeah, Jim.
I had a question, but it wasn't on the erosion issues or flooding issues necessarily. It's on another part of the presentation. Is that okay?
Sure.
In bridge maintenance, since we had what happened up in Minnesota, do we have any kind of plan in the city that goes and inspects our bridges and makes sure that they're in good shape on any frequency?
Yes. The Texas Department of Transportation, under state mandate, inspects our bridges every 2 years all across the state. And also, we are talking to some consultants right now to look at our bridges to see if, since the bridges were overtopped with water, if there's some issues. I've also contacted TxDOT, and they are aware of our concerns.
Okay.
So
How many bridges do we have approximately, Ben?
11.
11 bridges. Okay, so those 11 are the ones that we're focusing on
Yes.
right now. All right.
Because nearly all of our bridges at one time or another during these last rain events were overtopped with water.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Mr. Hutchison.
Yes, Bennett, you said we got about 22 point something miles of, or square, what is it, 22.5 miles of infrastructure that we got to replace or fix. And of course, the 103 million precludes, the city taking care of it all by itself. We need lots of help, obviously. But that doesn't mean that we're not doing anything. Is that correct?
What we're doing right now with the master drainage plan, every time we look at streets to reconstruct, to overlay, to reclaim, we see what the local drainage system should be, and we try to factor in those upgrades, replacements. So we are using it in a piecemeal, to do what the budget allows.
Okay, I'm going to try and say it where I think you'll understand what my question is, but in conjunction with this 22.5 miles, whenever we have a new development come up, whatever it may be, what do we put forward to make sure that they do not take the, let's say, 10-inch pipe down to a 3-inch pipe to take care of what they need? I mean, I know that we've had some issues in the city where the water needs to be a pipe this big, but actually we've shrunk it down to where it's only this big, so the water runs out on the sides. David, am I even making any sense?
Well, if you're talking about like a new subdivision coming in,
A new subdivision, a new shopping center,
they all have to build to the 100-year rain event. Since I've
so
been,
when they built up north of 820, Huntington Chase area and all those areas, they kept those pipes, or they put in the adequate size, and so the problem is still going to be closer to 820.
well, most of that was built before my time. So as far
I
as
understand that. It's just
exactly how that was constructed, I'd have to go look in the files and see which rain event they constructed that to. I don't know.
I mean, that's just my concern, because, I mean, going out there and looking at some of these places, it has definitely regressed in size.
And that's where some of the 22.5 and the 21.5 miles of pipe come in, is having to replace, add, that kind of thing.
So that would be like
all across the city.
That would be comparable to a Band-Aid. Going from little back to big would have to. How would we take a small pipe going back to the right size if it is undersized?
Well, for example, a prime example of that is when we reconstructed Mona a couple of years ago.
Okay.
The pipe flowing through Mona at the time was an 18-inch pipe. The design called for a 48-inch pipe to handle the 100-year rain event. We went ahead and put in the 48-inch pipe under Mona. Now, it did go back down to a smaller pipe because the system carried on. But at least what that does is have some kind of underground retention to handle some of the flow.
But wouldn't that pose for potential breaks? I mean, could that not cause problems further down the road?
No. That would only help us down the road. And as we extend the system...
if you do just Mona, and it crosses over to
right,
another street,
the water just sits there in the pipe. It's like water in your bathtub. If you think of the bathtub as the bigger pipe and your drain as the smaller pipe, the water just sits there in your bathtub until it drains out.
and when there's debris in the way, it drains really, really slow. As a result, it could flood your bathroom, which in comparison could be on the...
You could say that if we don't do anything to the pipe. So this is
That's just my visual.
it's a, as we clean as we can. And then when we know that something's plugged up, we try to clean it. But until we can find the money, $103 million, we will be piecemealing the drainage system together.
Any other questions? Well, I've got one. I want to for you, and probably one for David. And it may both be for David. I don't know. One of the things I want to know is we haven't mentioned White Creek specifically on your drainage things that we've done. My understanding was that we had looked at that. We had got some engineers to look at that, and they'd recommended that we not do that. That we leave that alone. Is that the case?
In the master plan, the engineers recommended not removing the debris, the trees and things from many parts of that creek because the trees act as a velocity decreaser.
Okay, so because they won't slow it down before it gets
Right.
down there to Fossil Creek.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some of the problems you can see around these bends, if the water goes, too quick around the bends, then you're going to have massive erosions and things like
Right.
that.
Okay. Just want to ask that. And also, David, I was asked about the use of the equipment that was bought under the auspices of the Drainage Utility Fund. And the observation was made that there are days where that equipment is not being used. I guess that doesn't surprise me that there would be days that we wouldn't be using that particular equipment. Is there some reason that we would expect that equipment, all the equipment, to be used every day?
I don't think that would be a reasonable expectation to think that we would use every piece of equipment that we've purchased in our department on a daily basis. Depends on what project we have to do. If we're cleaning out inlets, we don't need a track hoe. We just have a power washer.
Right.
And if we're cleaning out ditches, we don't need the power washer. So it just depends on what project we've identified to do at that particular time.
So given the
Then we
number of
identify
people that you got, to man the equipment, they may be manning one piece of equipment one day or 1 week and another piece another week.
That's true.
Is that correct?
Right now, we're in Buffalo Ridge Park, and I know we have 4 pieces of equipment on that particular project right now. And then when we identify another project in a couple of weeks, we may just use 2 pieces of equipment or 6 pieces of equipment.
But you wouldn't necessarily use every piece of equipment every day, even the ones on the site. I mean,
I think that would be an unreasonable expectation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you just got them there so you can use them in the order that they need to be used.
Yeah, we identify what we do.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
We're a drainage maintenance
correct
operation, so we know we need specific types of equipment. So in 2005, the council approved that funding
Sure.
for those particular pieces of equipment. And are they used daily? No, but we know we utilize those pieces of equipment annually. But
And
not
the last thing I have is when you work, like you did some work down in Little Fossil, that is in conjunction with the Corps of Engineers. I mean, they put the guidelines out, do they not, on what you can and can't do down in either whether you in Little Fossil or Big Fossil, I guess.
Yes,
either
they
one.
do.
Yeah.
They and we have a consultant, Miss Kelly Dillard, that we consult with, even on Buffalo Ridge project we're doing now, to make sure we're doing things we're not supposed to do in
Right.
particular areas
Okay.
in our drainage.
Very good. Any other questions, Jim?
Yeah, just real quick, and this is more for Bennett than anything. One of the fundamental assumptions that I heard from an engineering standpoint is that topography of the river, for instance, bends and curves, and vegetation is used to slow down the speed of the river so that erosion issues can be minimized. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I was wondering, along Big Fossil Creek, that very topography, even with vegetation there, serious erosion was there. And so I'm wondering if that understanding is helping us or hurting us solve our erosion and flooding problems in Haltom City. You see where I'm going, is that fundamental understanding has been adopted to help mitigate erosion issues. Well, what erosion issues? We have erosion issues along the river. What other erosion issues are we trying to mitigate against? Because we already have a serious erosion issue along Big Fossil Creek. that's not being mitigated by this philosophy?
Well, there's a whole series of reasons why the erosion at Big Fossil Creek. It's not just one issue.
Okay.
Some of the issues are groundwater. Some of the issues is the shear face wall. Some of it's fill material. There's just a whole, it's not just a flooding issue.
Well, maybe what would be some of the erosion issues that the faster or the swifter current would begin to do downstream from the river? Is there any that have been mentioned by the Corps? For instance, let's say we straightened the river out so it'd go faster. What kind of erosion issues specifically
Well, then
would that begin to cause?
Right, then you have velocity and scour issues along the bottom and along the sides.
Can you put that in practical terms of what that might result downstream?
Well, it would create additional erosion problems somewhere else. You have to be careful, and when you fix one area, you may be just pushing the problem somewhere else, either
I
upstream
understand.
or downstream.
Understand.
If one property owner puts up a retaining wall, it could potentially affect a whole series of neighbors or even downstream.
I'm just wondering if any erosion issues have been identified that would happen as a result of making the current flow swifter downstream, or if that's just a hypothetical, because we have a real erosion issue versus a hypothetical erosion issue is what I'm saying.
No, those issues have been dealt with in the planning of corrections, how we deal with it and how it impacts bridges, how it impacts other walls, how the velocity of the water hits another bend. Is I don't know if you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can see it from here, but like at Buffalo Ridge, you have an oxbow.
Right.
And nature wants to do away with oxbows. So over time, if we don't do anything, this oxbow will straighten itself out. It's
That's
just,
right.
You know, just what nature. And if you look at old aerial photos, you can see that oxbow coming closer together.
That's interesting. Okay.
Water wants to go to the path of least resistance. And the water coming this way will keep hitting that, and it's being forced around the oxbow.
That's right through the center of the park there.
Yeah, it'll just keep pushing this way. And one thing you have to remember, this is a prime example of when you make a correction in one part of the creek or ditch or whatever, it could affect people upstream, downstream. This is what happened through this area. This area right under Haltom Road is man-made. That's why it's all pretty and sloped and everything else. And it has an impact both upstream and downstream.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Bennett.
Any other questions for Mr. Howell or Mr. Fain? Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate you very much. Forgot to announce that Councilmember Chris Holcomb is absent tonight. He's going to try to make it and be a little late. Don't know if he's going to make it or not. He had a work event he couldn't pass up. So we'll be looking for him possibly to show up later. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda tonight will consist of items 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 8. Items 4 and 5 have been removed from the consent agenda. The consent agenda is considered to be self-explanatory and will be enacted by the council with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. Approval of the consent agenda authorizes the city manager to implement each item in accordance with staff or board recommendations. With that said, we'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda. Mr. Sutton.
Move to approve consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 8.
Ms. Branson.
It's for a second, Mayor.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda consisting of items 1 through 8, less items 4 and 5. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your vote. That is unanimous. Under the regular agenda, item 4, red light cameras. This will be a presentation by police. Russell?
Lieutenant Ragsdale.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council, for allowing me to be here tonight and speak to you about our proposed red light camera program. First, I want to share with you the goal of our program, which is to save lives by reducing the numbers of red light runners and hopefully reducing the numbers of fatalities and injuries that they cause. For the past year, I've been involved in following legislature related to red light camera enforcement. Recently, the legislature has approved red light cameras, and as such, we've decided to move forward with our proposal. During this time, we've conducted surveys at 9 separate locations throughout the city. These surveys were conducted for a 12-hour period, and during that time, we recorded almost 300 violations of red light violations. With that being said, I began studying vendors or contractors to utilize for the red light camera enforcement. I looked at contractors that were both local, they were non-intrusive to our roadways, so we could install the system without actual cuts to the roadway with minimal cost to the city. And the recommendation that staff has for you here today is requesting approval for Redflex to be the authorized red light camera enforcement contractor here in the city. Part of those reasons, Redflex is the largest red light camera contractor in North America. They are local. They have an office in North Richmond Hills. They're web-based, which means the software is non-proprietary, so we can use it without additional cost for licenses. They are non-intrusive to our roadways, and they are also on the HGAC contract, which would prevent us from having to go out for bids. And I will take any questions you have.
Any questions for Lieutenant Ragsdale? Ms. Branson?
I think it would be interesting to know if any of our neighboring cities have red light cameras.
Most of our neighboring cities do. North Richmond Hills, Hurst, and Euless both have systems online. Mansfield, Fort Worth is just implementing their system. Arlington, Plano, Frisco.
So we're surrounded.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sutton?
Yeah, I just want to make sure about this. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but it'd be good to have it out in the open. The installation of these cameras is not going to be at any taxpayer expense, correct?
No, sir. The installation of these systems is completely violator funded. The only exception to that, as we discussed here in pre-council, is if we decide to cancel the contract, then the city would be liable for actual installation cost, not for the equipment cost, but for installation cost.
So if we don't cancel this contract, it is absolutely free to the taxpayer to have these red lights installed on our traffic signals. Upwards of from 5 to 20 is what the contract calls for.
Yes, sir. That is the recommendation.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Hutchison?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lieutenant, could you explain in terms of manpower for the police department what this is going to save you guys having this having these red lights?
Really, that's a question that's hard to answer. In that we currently don't have the manpower to set out at all 9 of these locations and catch red light violators. In addition to the fact that it's quite dangerous for our officers to see a violator and then in turn have to violate the red light ourselves to catch up to them. So, man hours, I can't tell you exactly what it would save. We are looking at safety in our city at a minimal cost to the city and a minimal cost to manpower as well, in that we're viewing everything over the web.
Ms. Branson?
I thought maybe you were going to touch on this, but you didn't. Back in pre-council, there was a conversation that Mr. Sutton started about some concerns if someone is driving the car, perhaps you sold the car and it comes back to you. Can you address that for other citizens that may be wondering how that piece is going to work?
I can briefly, if you would. I'd like to introduce Gwen Miller with Redflex. She can probably explain that just a little bit better than what I can.
Great, thanks.
City Council and Mayor, thank you.
Would you adjust that mic?
I'm short, sorry.
Yeah.
Anytime that you have loaned your car to your grandson.
Gwen, just talk right into that mic.
Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I'm sorry. You can nominate your grandson. This is a civil violation. If your grandson doesn't pay it, it will come back to you, just like a parking ticket. But you do have that nomination that you can do. If your car is stolen, or in this effect, you sold it, You just have to give a bill of sale or a police report showing it was stolen, and the ticket will be dismissed. But you are responsible for your vehicle. Just like if you loaned somebody your car and they had a wreck, bottom line, they can come back to the owner of the vehicle.
In the back, I believe Chief Burton mentioned that if you sell your car, I'm going to sell my car to the mayor, and he's just not going to bother to go pay the tax and register it. There's something that I can do on my end that I can file so that his irresponsibility doesn't reflect on me.
For the police department.
That is correct. Whenever you sell a motor vehicle, there is paperwork that the Department of Public Safety does provide. You can fill out to state that you've sold this vehicle, so it's on record. The buyer is responsible for registering the vehicle, and as such, they would then get the citation. We do run into instances where that is not the case, but the seller of any vehicle can file paperwork with the Department of Transportation to alleviate those problems.
So
Thanks.
even though I don't like Diane and I want her to get all my tickets, eventually I will have to pay them, right?
Yes, sir, you will.
Okay, all right. Just want to clear that up. Ms. Reese.
Thank you. If I could have you just identify some of the major intersections, and then I guess the next one for her would be the maintenance of the cameras. You know, who's going to perform that, the expense if there is
Okay.
one, and how the expense is offset.
The 9 intersections in which we conducted our study on at this point in time: Western Center and Silver Sage, Loop 820 and Haltom Road, Denton Highway and Browning, Denton Highway and 820, Denton Highway and Glenview, Denton Highway and Webster, Northeast 28th Street in Layton, Belknap and Carson, Belknap and Layton. And as far as the maintenance issues, Redflex is responsible for all maintenance on cameras pretty much 24 hours. So we have a problem, we contact them, and they send a repair crew out to correct those problems.
Is there a cost factor involved in that? And
No, it's all associated with the revenue portions of the citation that we've already addressed.
okay, all right.
Mr. Sutton.
Thank you, Mayor. Safety issues. We've seen some newspaper reports from time to time on saying that there were accidents caused because there was a red light camera there. And of course, you know, you can always, in statistics, you can always show the data that you want to show and omit data that you don't show, that you don't, is not favorable to your perspective. So what I'd like to know is, has safety been increased or decreased based upon the statistics out there with the addition of red light cameras?
Well, when you look at safety, there's a couple of aspects you need to look at. You have minor accidents, you have major accidents. 90-degree impacts, of course, are the most deadly, and that's what we're trying to stop. When red light cameras are first implemented, most cities do see a slight increase in minor accidents. These are rear-end collision accidents where people have decided they're going to stop for the red light, and the vehicle behind them now bumps into them. Those are normally alleviated in a short period of time as people become accustomed to stopping for the red lights. Again, with all of our neighbors implementing the red light program, you really are starting to see some compliance with that already, because no one knows which intersection is tagged with the camera. So.
I see. So can I ask, you compile these statistics, obviously, so how long do you expect to see a bump in minor traffic violations have you seen typically in cities that implement red light cameras? And what is the turn down in major accidents, if I could ask?
There's been a decrease in many cities of well over 50% in major accidents, with an increase of less than 10% in minor accidents.
Okay, and how long does that 10% increase last typically?
I do not have that answer here with me.
Does Gwen know?
Plano is a very good example for y'all to look at. They've been in the ground for a year. Statistics are what they are. They reported that they had a 50% increase on rear-end collisions. What they failed to tell you, that was 7.
7. Oh, okay.
Okay? They had 3 the year before, but they failed to tell you that it was just 7.
Okay.
And that's one thing about statistics and percentages. They sometimes are disguised.
They're deceptive.
Yeah, they may. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all in the perception of how you're reading it.
Right.
Plano had 65% reductions in T-bones, 55% reduction in red light running, and it's dropping. We had a 94% compliance as far as people paying their citations. It's kind of hard when you see that 12 seconds of video and your little car is just kind of in the intersection going through it.
Okay.
It's what it is.
All right. All right, thank you.
Mr. Cabana.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've got 9 intersections there. What was the total of violations during your study time?
The total of violations for a 12-hour period were 294 violations.
For 9, I mean that's quite a bit, and I knew the number. I just want to make sure everybody else did. I mean that's 200 people running red lights.
Yes, sir.
The potential of 200 different accidents occurring there.
Actually, close to 300, 294.
Thank you. 300 accidents that the potential's out there, and with school getting back up, I think that's very relevant. How long would it take from the time that contract signed going forward to the red lights being up and going?
Gwen.
If it's not a text dot issue, we can get them in the ground in 120 days. That's with the hangs and the proving of the intersection. If TxDOT works in compliance with us, we get the drawings to them, they stamp off on them. It just depends on their time frame working with us, but we will work diligently with them, trying to get everything put in place. They have some rules that they want us to follow, and they're not going to waver from those rules.
Is it anything out of the norm? I mean, they're just
Yes.
okay.
Yes,
It's
it is.
TxDOT, yeah.
We cannot use any of their power. We cannot hang anything on their infrastructure. We have to supply them with street intersection drawings and how our equipment is going to be placed in that intersection and what type of setup it is. And then they take it, they look at it, evaluate it, either give us an okay, or they write back and say, no, you got to move it 2 feet this way, or it's got to be 12 feet up instead of 10, or, it's whatever they want.
Right.
We have to put signage on, we will put signage on every one of the intersections that they are camera enforced.
Great. And how many potentially through the 9 were on Denton Highway? I'd forgotten.
4 of them were on Denton Highway.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Lieutenant Ragsdale? Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Well, this is not an ordinary public hearing, but we do have a citizen who wants to address the red light cameras. So, Mr. Journay, you want to come forward and introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Council, Mayor. I didn't expect this to be on the agenda whenever I got here, so I wrote this rather quickly. Okay, it's something of fuzzy math. As I've told you before, if I go to thinking, in 4-figure digits, my brain hurts. But when you add 2 and 2 together, we're not supposed to come up with 7. By the same token, I once asked a few students what a political science does. Rather than giving me a direct answer or any answer at all, they one by one departed, similar to the time that our Lord asked anyone in a crowd without sin to step forward and cast the first stone. There is an obvious reason why city governments are outsourcing their responsibility to auto insurance and red light camera companies. It relieves our police departments of many responsibilities that, in fact, save lives. No one knows this better than both outlaws, careless drivers, city governments, and business lobbyists. But then, even our president has agreed that sometimes money trumps human life. And of course, with the cameras installed and the insurance mandated and arbitrating our traffic laws, our police can dress themselves in jackboots and battle gear and wait for the, quote, bad guys. And the people Well, we're right back where we started. Pardon me. We're right back where we started when there was no insurance. Our Constitution allows us proper redress of our government. We have no course of redress with outsourced free enterprise. Lobbyists know this, so do those with political science degrees. But the citizenry is not supposed to question this behavior, right? So, as we count the money we can save with mandating insurance and evasive cameras, let us also consider the crime element, the cost of life and property because of government neglect and compliance. Or, if any of us truly feel that I'm wrong, even misinformed, let he or she step forward or contact me and cast the first stone. Our democracy will last only until those at the top believe the wealth of this nation belongs to them alone, thereby bankrupting this nation into extreme poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Well, I don't know about casting the first stone, but I will say that I certainly support this effort to increase safety in our community, and your comments notwithstanding, sir. Anyone else?
I agree. I think this initiative increases the safety of our community, and I think that's one of the reasons why we asked originally to look into it, is because of the safety issue that was there. Because of the 294 violations that we saw that could result in somebody losing their life. So I think that it's a good safety initiative.
Mr. Hutchinson?
And I'll go even a step further and say that I take exception to the idea that we're doing this because it's a money-saving cost instead of the cost of lives. I think the cost of lives is what was considered first and foremost in this safety issue, and so I very much am in favor of this particular initiative.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lieutenant, what's the average cost on a red light violation ticket? Isn't it pretty standard? It's not a speeding ticket.
The violation is actually mandated by the Senate at $75 violation.
$75?
Yes, sir.
For $75, I don't want one of our police officers to break the intersection to try to get a $75 ticket. And then we have to deal with his family after he's T-boned.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Sutton?
I don't want to stand up here as a council member and say that whenever a family's been T-boned, he says, what did you do about it? And a red light would have caught that violation. I don't want to stand up here and be accused of not doing anything. So I think that this is a good initiative to begin to address that proactively.
Well, if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to dispose. Item 4. Mr. Cabano?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we accept agenda item 4 for the red light cameras for the contract to be signed.
Ms. Branson?
It's for a second, Mayor.
Been moved and seconded to approve item 4, red light cameras. Any further discussion? If not, please register your vote. That is unanimous. Next item on the agenda is item 5. This is a bid award B2007-061-17. This is consideration and/or action awarding a bid for group medical benefits, prescription drug benefits, stop loss administration, group dental benefits, and fully insured vision.
Mayor and members of the City Council, we're here to talk about the competitive bids that the city sought for the dental, health, and vision insurance with the multiple vendors. We did this to evaluate the competitiveness of our plans and to make sure that we were getting the best bang for our buck for the employees as well as for the city. I'll look at each of the benefits separately. And on the medical insurance, after we evaluated the bids, we recommend that the city move the medical insurance from Cigna to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas. Blue Cross Blue Shield offers an HMO and a PPO, which is very similar to the current offerings of an HMO and a point of service. They also have provided a quote that is results in a 0% increase on the HMO, and on the PPO it results in a 16% decrease. Overall, the benefits are very favorable to what they are currently. For example, the doctor visit will go from $20 to $25. A specialist visit would go from $40 to $25. And a visit to the emergency room would go from $200 to $75. Based upon this information, staff recommends that the council award the bid for medical insurance to Blue Cross Blue Shield. On the dental insurance, the current dental insurance is with Safeguard. Staff recommends that we stay with Safeguard an additional year. It results in a 0% increase in the premiums from Safeguard, and they also have offered a 2-year rate guarantee, which is very beneficial. That means we won't have to go out to bid for an additional 2 years for the dental insurance. This continuity with Safeguard will be favorable to the employees because there won't be any disruption in terms of their dental coverage. Safeguard offers a DMO as well as a PPO plan, so employees can either go in-network or out-of-network. Based on that, staff recommends that we maintain our current contract with Safeguard. On the vision benefits, we currently don't provide vision benefits to employees. We sought this bid to determine if that might be something that we could offer to employees as an enhancement. We got several bids. Staff recommends that the bid be awarded to Safeguard to provide vision benefits to employees. The city would pay 100% of the employee-only rates, and employees would have the opportunity to buy up for dependent coverage if they so choose. Once this item has been approved, we'll start communications with the employees. We'll have open enrollment starting in August, running through mid-September, and all the benefits will be effective on October 1st. Are there any questions?
Ms. Reese?
Well, first, I don't want to start off with a question at first, but I want to tell you thank you very much for what you have done.
Thank you.
I think there's going to be a huge savings for the employees we presently have, and hopefully the rest that want to come to us. Because I know, and as you know, benefits are a big thing that they look at, and I was going over information today on past rates that was paid when my husband worked here, and I can see where we're finally coming around. And I want you to know publicly, I'm very proud of the work that you've done, and I truly appreciate it. And with that, I'm hoping we'll have more of our employees sign their families up, because as it's stated, the more we get, the less it'll come, the more it'll come down. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I want to, could I get you to inform everyone how y'all are going about informing the employees with the card y'all gave out last week?
Okay.
And then, because I think Tom told me about that today, and I was very intrigued and thought that was great.
Okay. I think marketing and communication is a very important part of any employee benefit plan that you have. So for our theme this year, we're using Don't Gamble with Your Health. So as our initial tickler to employees, we took playing cards and put a label on the backside of playing cards informing employees that we'd be having open enrollment meetings at the end of August and reminding them that they should come. And so those went in the paychecks last Thursday. At the next time we get paid, I guess the employees are going to figure this out anyway. We're going to do another reminder, and it'll be poker chips with a circular label on it that has some additional information. And then we'll also be preparing and distributing to all the employees a benefits newsletter that gives them very detailed and specific information about what they need to do in order to ensure that they have the benefits they need effective October 1st. And it'll outline some of the changes on each of the benefit plans. And it'll really encompass more than we're talking about here, because it'll cover everything. It'll talk about the 457 plans that we offer and all of the supplemental benefits we offer as well.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tony, if we do approve this bid, the medical, the dental, and the vision, will that have any impact on our retirees on any of those three subjects?
No, it will not, because currently the benefits that are provided to retirees, they receive up to $200 reimbursement for their benefits. They can enroll in these same benefits, but the maximum payable is $200. So they might see a slight savings, if the rates went down, particularly if they were on the PPO, on the medical, and the rates went down 16%, they would realize that savings because it is above $200.
So the more of them signed up would be beneficial also?
Yes, it would be.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sutton?
I just want to piggyback on Councilmember Reese and Councilmember Clark, that this is a terrific job that you've done. And the bottom line is that you have reduced the cost to the employees to get insurance at the same or better benefit levels. In doing so, you've also reduced the cost to the citizen, the taxpayer here in Haltom City, because the cost of this plan is actually less. So it's, I don't know, you worked magic. You did very, very good, and this is kind of a great thing when you see city costs actually going down, but the benefits going up. That's great.
Thank you.
That's not magic. That's 10, 11 hours a day. Okay.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tony? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we consider disposal. Ms. Branson?
No, I was going to make a motion.
Okay.
I would like to move that we accept Blue Cross Blue Shield for the medical benefits and for the vision and dental safeguard as presented in our packet.
Okay, Mr. Hutchison?
That's our second, Mr. Mayor.
Been moved and seconded to approve item 5 regarding our medical benefits, et cetera. Any further discussion? Please register your vote. And that is unanimous. Next on the regular agenda is item 9. This is flooding and erosion issues. We'll get an update and discussion on recent issues here. And Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I will be doing this. I do have Mr. Bynum sitting in the back, so he's probably listening, and as he feels the need that he needs to come correct me, he will spring out here. He's coiled, ready to spring into action, I'm sure. I don't. I've kind of lumped these things together, and I know most of the people are probably interested in the skyline and the issues up on Big Fossil. And let me deal with the Fenway, the Skyline Mobile Home Park stuff first. The last meeting we talked about how we were going to be sending out a couple of letters. One letter which went to about 59 property owners that had no water servicing their properties, and the letter explained that the ones that were still living down there, that how it was against the law to continue living there with no water. There was a legal issue there, and advising them that they needed to move, unfortunately, move on somewhere else. And that letter had some effect. There's still about 3 or 4 people still down there. After looking at it last week, I've instructed staff to get their ducks in a row to get the warrants ready to execute warrants to remove the folks from these areas. Don't like doing that. Don't take any pleasure in doing that, but it's something's going to have to be done now. We've also been working. We are working with HUD, trying to find if there's some options to where these people can go. Some additional aid. This is something that came to our attention within the last couple of weeks. We're working with that, but with FEMA assistance that's been given, and Red Cross and some of the other organizations, we're hopeful that we'll have a place for these folks to go. Barring that, if they choose not to use it, then it's going to be up to them to decide where they're going to be going. But staying down there is not going to be an option. But that'll be coming up sometime soon. We do not have those warrants ready, but we are working towards that end. Also, at the last council meeting, I explained how we were talking about the FEMA maps and how the maps that we had were maybe not to the properly reflecting the FEMA points that FEMA had. So I retained an engineering firm to survey the properties using the FEMA points, the current FEMA points that FEMA designates floodways and floodplains as it relates to that park and as it relates to the properties that are located within the park. Those points were made and referenced. We've identified the lots based on those points and sent letters out last week outlining the issues that they may be having as being in the floodway or floodplain. Certainly, if there was a home that was damaged more than 51%, they're going to, well, let me back up. If they're in the floodway and their home has been damaged beyond the 51%, it's been removed or whatnot, going back into a property on the floodway is not an option. They cannot do that. The floodplain ordinance doesn't allow it. FEMA doesn't allow it. It's just not an option. For people in the floodplain, there are some possibilities. And in the letter we explained if their home was damaged more than the 51%, they're going to have to certainly adhere to the floodplain ordinance and the different kind of ordinances that we had, including the zoning ordinance as well. Determining the 51% damage, at the last meeting we were considering hiring a firm to come in to determine that. And then we found out last week or two that the county has inspectors that are certified to do this type of function. So they came out last week and they've walked the properties. They've already made some preliminary determinations. There's quite a few that they need to continue working on, but we should have those determinations hopefully within the week. Or certainly by next week. But that is something that is still working. From a cleanup standpoint, we are starting to work with FEMA as far as trying to coordinate something with debris removal and cleanup, but it's certainly beyond us. It'll probably be we'll be looking at talking with FEMA about bringing in a firm that's been certified and qualified to do this type of thing, since the vastness of the debris is pretty wide. Each of the property owners technically are responsible for the debris on their property. So there's been some work done, but for the most part, there hasn't been much done down there on an overall basis. So we can't continue with the situation down there, so we're going to have to look at going to the next step. Again, this is very, very preliminary as far as looking at it. If the property owners still want to, do their due diligence and take care of their properties, they certainly have that opportunity. I don't have a timeline per se for the debris removal, but it's something that's going to need to be addressed. If it's been 2 months now and there hasn't been much going towards it, I don't have a lot of expectation that a lot more is going to be going towards it unless we step in. So we are proceeding along that trail. We have been at the time of the flood, a lot was made about a notice of interest that we had submitted to the state regarding our desire to participate in the hazard mitigation program. Those new notice of interest are due at the end of next week. We have already prepared something for the Skyline Mobile Home Park area to participate in that, and we'll be going over that and finalizing that this week and submitting that to the state for that. But that's, again, a step in the process. It's still going to be, could be as long as a year before we even hear much about that. So it is still something that we're pursuing. In that program, it'd be a 75-25 match, to where the federal government would be providing 75% of the funds, and the city would be matching it with 25%. Either that or in-kind services. So in that area, if you got any questions about what I just said regarding Skyline, let me go ahead and take those now before I move on to the other area.
Any questions for Tom on the Skyline update? Okay, fine.
You want to, any citizens that want to talk about it, or you want to wait till after I finish both?
Well, go ahead and do what you're doing, and then we'll open it up.
All right. Regarding the folks on Big Fossil Creek, I don't have not nearly as much to say as what I did with the Skyline. There's not been a whole lot of new information. We are still looking at alternatives. We are looking at some things as far as possibly using gabions or something of the like up there, but it's still very, very preliminary. Not really wanting to get a lot of folks' hopes up yet, because it is extremely preliminary right now. At the last council meeting, there was some comment made about water underneath one of the homes, about running water, that the thought was that it was coming from a water main leak or a break or of some sort. Since that time, we have obtained samples and sent them off for testing. We got a verbal commitment that a verbal result that the test came up negative as far as chlorine, but we certainly do understand that chlorine does dissipate as it goes through the ground. We also retained a leak detection company that performed a leak detection on the lines up there and at all the homes that are in that area, and they did not detect any leaks outside of a slight meter movement at a couple of homes that were. I don't think they were in close proximity to where the water issues were, so it wasn't. There's nothing that lend itself that it was a water main break. It's groundwater, and apparently since 3 weeks ago, the groundwater, it's my understanding, has dissipated quite a bit. It's still there, but it's not flowing nearly as much or as hard as it was for several weeks. Certainly after the erosion issues happened, and then it just for several weeks after that, it was just a constant, steady flow, and that was certainly a concern. But there's nothing there that leads us to think it's anything else but groundwater. We are looking at also doing a notice of intent to participate in programs for that. There's not so much. It's a FEMA program, but not through the same one that Skyline is through, because it's the one that we're submitting with Skyline has got to have a history of flooding. There's not a history of flooding up there on Big Fossil. It's a history of erosion, and as you heard the city engineer talk about, there's a difference between flooding and erosion. There is a separate program that deals with erosion issues, and we are preparing to make notice of intent issues regarding those properties. Some of them include correcting the erosion. Some of them include buyouts of the properties. And so those are things that we're still kind of looking at, but it's still very preliminary. We have not. We are trying to get caught up with some solutions, some options, but there might be some things that might be able to be done here very soon. It's just nothing that I'm ready to prepared to talk about tonight. Outside of that, I'll take any questions.
All right, any questions up on the dais? All right. We have one citizen that signed up to speak, Ms. Eugenia Dean, who wants to talk about the Skyline flooding.
Hi, y'all. I got a couple questions. First, I need more than 30 days to get my trailer off.
We'll work with everybody on that.
Okay. Second of all, this survey that y'all had done put me in the floodway after being out there for 21 years and being in the floodplain. And I don't understand.
Ms. Dean, I don't think that's correct.
You've been in the floodway all this time. You're just looking at FEMA maps that are so broad, and you're taking it such a high. They weren't pinpointing your lots there. We're using the current FEMA points. It's not the proposed points. It's the same points that they were using back in '95. The maps that you were currently using. We have just pinpointed them to as they relate to each specific lot. So you've been in the floodway. You just didn't know it.
Well, answer me a question then. How come I have to walk downhill to get to lot 113, 114, 156, 157, 158 that are in the floodplain?
I can't answer that.
These that are in the floodplain, I have to walk downhill to get to them.
Mm-hmm.
How can I be in the floodway and be higher up than these are that are in the floodplain?
According to the terrain and the points that were provided by FEMA, that's where it is.
Doesn't make any sense. If you're higher up, how can you be?
Well, you're much closer to the creek than those folks in 114.
Well, the creek's been in my backyard for 21 years.
You're going to be closer into the floodway, Ms. Dean, than the folks at 114 and those other lots that you're looking at.
114 and 113 are just 2 trailers away from the creek where y'all had to cut that
and
trailer
I don't
out of
have
the creek.
I don't have the map here in front of me, so
I've got
I
it
don't
right
know.
here if you want to look at it. But they're just 2 trailers away in a street away from the creek where y'all had to cut that
Ms.
trailer
Dean,
out
we're,
of the.
we're probably not prepared to answer engineering type questions here, but I'm pretty certain that if we get an engineer to look at those, that they will either confirm or deny that. I mean, that's done pretty recently.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
But that's my question. You know, this falls back here, and that's where a trailer was cut out. Had to be cut up out of the creek.
Up and down are all relative terms. You know, I mean,
Well,
there's
going north and south,
Yeah.
the north and south part of the Bonanza, back behind lots 116, 115, 163, 164, 165, all in that area. But then across, right, 115, 1 trailer away from the creek is in the floodplain.
Well, if you dispute the accuracy,
Yes,
then
there's never been.
this is not the place to do that. I mean,
There's never. Let me just say this: anytime anyone's tried to do a survey out in that park of their lots, surveyors have had a hard time, and some of them have not been able to do them, and because of the way the park was laid out. It's like lot number, for example, lot number 58 was our maintenance lot forever and ever and ever because it was so small, and because the way that they plotted the lots didn't make it large enough for a mobile home. Well, we've got somebody living on it now, but they don't have any yard on either side of them, and so I'm just saying that this has always been a problem getting surveys done out at Skyline.
Well,
So I do have a problem with the survey.
Well, that's understandable. I can understand why, because the survey puts you in the floodway. I can understand why you have the problem.
Yeah.
But 1/3, the lots you're talking about are completely on the other side of the park from you.
Right.
They're much farther away from the creek than what you've already admitted your lot is. Your lot is a lot closer to the creek than what these are.
But
you're going to be in the floodway as close as you are.
Did they not cut a trailer up and take it out that was just right there in that same area?
I don't know.
I believe they did.
I don't know. They may have. I have no idea. No, they didn't.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Ms. Dean, if
75 yards, is that all?
Ms. Dean, if you're challenging the accuracy of the FEMA maps and the accuracy of the engineering survey that was done, please take that
No,
up.
I'm not.
Please take that up with the administration
FEMA
later.
With the survey.
Okay. The survey was done using the FEMA information.
We just took the
Well, it's just
engineering
real
firm
funny that one week I'm told this, next week I'm told this, next week I'm told, okay, you've got to do this to go ahead and go back home, and then I'm told, well, wait a minute, we decided we're gonna do a survey, and now, okay, well, now you can't go home because
Well, let me
we
ask you this:
decided
if
you're
we'd
in
done the survey
floodway.
and you found out you could go home, you'd be happy with it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I want to go home.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
because
that's
3 weeks ago you were
yeah.
you were very happy we were going to be doing the survey. You were satisfied with that.
What you're looking for is an
not
outcome,
really,
and we
but
can't guarantee an
I want to
outcome,
go
Ms. Dean.
home, y'all.
Yeah, we can't guarantee that you get the right outcome that you want. I'm sorry.
Laugh at me, Tom. This is my life. It's all been uprooted.
Eugenia, letting you go back down to that creek in the floodway, it'd be irresponsible of us. I'm sorry.
It's against
I
the
would
law.
love for you to go home. I would dearly love for you to go home.
Why
it would
can't
be
it
irresponsible of
can't-
us to do that.
why can't
And when
these
it floods
guys
again, Eugenia, hang
that
on
are
just a minute.
cleaning out
Eugenia,
the
let me
creeks-
finish, please. We've talked several times about this. We know it's going to flood again. You and I both, we've talked about that. We know it's going to flood again. I don't want to have to answer why you went back down there, why we let you go back down there when it's in a floodway.
Why
Floodway,
can't these
Eugenia.
guys cleaning out the creeks fix the creek, clean out the creek?
That's not the issue. Cleaning it is not the issue. It's a low-lying ground anyway. Cleaning it is not the issue.
Why did Haltom City allow this park? Y'all welcomed this park over 30 years ago.
Ms. Dean, that was 30 years ago. We're going to do what we've got to do to protect the safety of our citizens today.
So what are y'all going to do for the people that have been displaced without kicking?
We've
Just
we've-
a minute,
that
Mr.
is-
Mayor.
That's what we're trying to do.
Am I
That's what
being
we're trying to
kicked
do.
out of Haltom City?
No, you're not being kicked out of Haltom City. If the only choice for you to stay in Haltom City is have a new trailer placed inside a park in Haltom City, well then, yeah, you're gonna. If that's the only way that you just gonna stay in Haltom City, you may have a challenge there. We'd love for you to stay. There's many opportunities for you to do some different things. But if it's going to be in a trailer down at the bottom of this park, I'm sorry.
No.
That's not going to happen.
I mean, is there any other options? What are these options that you were talking about earlier? That HUD was talking about, that you were talking about with FEMA?
We're trying to find that out from HUD.
It just won't be in the floodway. That's against the law.
Fine. That's fine.
But I know, I mean, FEMA's giving you money. I know my advice was to spend that effort in trying to find a place to put your trailer. Back down here in that park at the bottom there, in the lot that you own. I know you own it. Putting it back down there, I'm sorry, it's not an option. I wish it'd be easier for me to do that. I would love for you to go back down. It'd be easier for me to do that. It'd be irresponsible of me to let you do that.
So is this thing with HUD? That's not the buyout?
That's not the buyout. Buyout's going to take some time.
So
going to take time.
If you're in the floodplain and not my lot, but if you're in the floodplain and you're on the meter that's turned off, and you don't have to leave because you never were affected by water.
Yes, you are going to have to leave. You cannot stay down there with no water.
Okay.
Cannot be down there.
And the park's responsible for fixing the water main. But let's say the lot that we're talking about has a city water main on it.
A city water main?
A city water.
Can you tap into it? Is that what you're asking?
The lot's got a city water meter on it.
Oh, a city water meter.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Can the city not
I believe your condo regime would prohibit that. You're going to have to get your water through the regime.
You're breaking it up anyway.
No, I'm not. I'm not breaking it up.
Well, that's what's happening here.
It may be.
But if it has a water meter on it, a city water meter on it.
A meter that services a number of other homes.
Just the one.
No, it's not serving just the one.
Yes.
I'm not aware that I've got a
There's
meter.
7 water meters in there, 7 individual water meters, besides the 6 main water meters that some individuals about 12 years ago, had installed on their properties. And one of these lots that is on the meter that's turned off has one of those city water meters that was purchased from Haltom City.
Okay. You're telling me more information than I know. I'm not aware of. My understanding is that all the meters that are up there are tied into the association's water system. That there are no other meters that are privately metered to a trailer that's located within that park.
There is 7 others.
7
Yes.
others? I've got some board members out here that are saying something other than
I'm telling you,
that.
I was on the board when these 7 other water meters were put in.
Okay, well, that may be something that I'm going to have to look into.
Ms. Dean, we've spent quite a bit of time on this. Would you? We understand how you feel and what your position is. Would you mind relinquishing and let's so we can?
Well, I
go
just
on.
wondered if y'all would turn the water on to that meter.
No, we're not going to do that without some inspection on what to verify
I
what
mean,
you're
this-
saying.
these guys
We-
don't know.
we're
They
not
weren't
gonna-
even
we're
there
not just-
then.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. We're not going to promise
I'm
you.
not prepared to answer that question right now.
Thank you. Ms. Reese?
I just had a point of clarification, and I'm hoping I can help you to understand. On the water side of it, is there might be multiple water meters within, but they tap into one, maybe two mains. You have one main compromised. I don't think your neighbors next to you, me, any of these people in here is going to want to have a mandatory boil water. I don't want to see you drink a glass of water and get sick and die. And it's that, I mean, and I know that's not the answer you want, but coming from a public safety, I don't want to see any more damage done, you know, on the water main side of it. I understand the water side of it, the compromising of the mains, because it all, even though you've got your own meter, the water is what it is. And if it's been compromised. Yes.
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Correct. Yeah. No.
Yes. They can't live there. When we execute the warrants, it'll be just to remove the people from the property. It won't be to say move the trailer or anything like that. That's their property. They can do with it as they see fit. It'll be between them and the association whether the trailer stays there.
In the floodway. Is it? What about
Because
if it's in the floodway?
it's existing. It's a pre-existing condition right now.
All right. All right.
I'm sorry. I think you had maybe some other. Did you guys? You looked like you were wanting to say something on this. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. All right. Please make it brief. Thank you.
First of all, from Skyline Mobile Home Park, I'd like to thank the city for not forgetting us.
Hang on. Just give us your name and your address, please.
Scott Elledge. I lived at 152 in Skyline. I owned 11 of the affected properties in the park. Like I said, I'd like to thank y'all for not forgetting us. We flooded there for a long time, and I'm glad to see now that we're getting attention and it's going to be taken care of. We would love to remove the debris and get it cleaned up. The problem is we all pretty much lost everything down there. Mr. Pliska, I believe I say his last name, has been a great help. All the code enforcement department has. What I'd like to ask for y'all is two things. If we could possibly get another crane pickup by the trash truck down there for bulk. I mean, it would help immensely if we could bring everything to the curb and the crane truck come down and pick it up again. Because the last time they came, they only stopped at the top of the hill where everybody was illegally dumping. They didn't go down into the park.
I'm not saying no, but let me get back to you on that.
Okay. Second thing, is there any way that the city could provide us either with the big dumpsters or possibly, a less extravagant request, is give us multiple dump days down at the dump off Carson Road? So we could go
at the
down
transfer
there.
station?
Yes, sir. If we could go down there maybe a couple of days a week for a little while so we could tear down the houses and get them cleaned up for y'all. Because I know it's a hazard.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't many years ago that a little girl was raped in a vacant house down there. And we don't need that situation again.
No, we don't. Let me get back to you on that too. But
Okay.
I'll get back to you shortly.
Okay. Well, I appreciate y'all, and I thank y'all for not allowing anyone to live in the floodway. So we don't need another Allie Collins dying on us. So.
We don't need that.
Thank you.
It's okay if I get. I mean, you're on the board, right? Okay. If Bill, is it okay if I get back with Bill? Okay.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Tom, for bringing us up to snuff on that. Next item on the agenda is the Audit Committee appointments. We have any appointments to the Audit Committee? Ms. Branson.
I would like to nominate Mayor Pro Tem Dale Clark, Blakely Cabano, and Chris Holcomb as members of the Audit Committee, and as an alternate, Jim Sutton.
Okay, you've heard the nominations. Is there a second? Mr. Hutchison.
Yes, that would be for a second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to nominate Mr. Clark, Mr. Cabano, Mr. Holcomb, and Mr. Sutton as an alternative to the Audit Committee. Any further discussion? Please register your vote. That is unanimous. been suggested we might take a break. We're at the about the 8:30 mark. We've been at it about an hour and a half. Why don't we take well, it's nearly 8:35. Why don't we take a 10-minute break and meet back at 7:45? Excuse me. Do what?
8:45. You said.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's 8:35. We'll meet back at 8:45.